The scrapyard stretched across 3 kilometers of Mars' rust-colored surface, a graveyard of humanity's abandoned dreams. Among the twisted hulls and gutted freighters sat the Valiant, a Concordia-class frigate that had seen better decades. Its hull plates were scorched black from atmospheric re-entry, its weapons system stripped for parts, and its reactor core sat cold and silent. Marcus Chen wiped the red dust from his goggles as he surveyed his purchase. The other mechanics at the yard had laughed when he'd spent his life savings on the derelict ship. "That thing's older than your grandfather," they'd said. The Kryn wouldn't even bother shooting it down. But Marcus saw something they didn't. He saw possibility. The Kryn had arrived 6 months ago, their fleet darkening Earth's skies with an ultimatum: surrender or be annihilated. Humanity's modern fleet, sleek and powerful, had engaged them in orbit. The battle lasted 4 hours. Humanity lost. Now the Kryn blockade strangled every major colony, allowing only essential supplies through their checkpoints. They didn't bother with old scrapyards on Mars, why would they? There was nothing here but obsolete junk. Marcus climbed into the Valiant's cockpit, his boots clanging on the metal deck. The ship still had good bones. Concordia-class vessels were built during the expansion wars, over-engineered for conflicts that demanded reliability over elegance. Every system had 3 backups. Every component could be field repaired with basic tools. He spent the first week just getting her systems online. The reactor sputtered to life, coughing out energy in irregular bursts until he recalibrated the magnetic containment. The life support wheezed but held. Navigation was a mess of corrupted data, but the gyroscope still spun true. "You're wasting your time," said Yuki, another mechanic who sometimes brought him spare parts. "Even if you get it flying, what then? The Kryn will swat you down like a fly." Marcus didn't answer. He was too busy studying the Kryn's patrol patterns, downloaded from the colony's resistance network. The aliens were efficient but predictable. They relied on superior firepower and advanced shields, confident that humanity's remaining ships posed no real threat. They weren't wrong. Humanity's modern vessels used plasma accelerators and fusion missiles, impressive weapons that the Kryn shields absorbed with ease. But the Valiant was from a different era. In the ship's armory, Marcus found what he'd been hoping for: the mounting brackets for Mark 7 railguns. Kinetic weapons, primitive by modern standards, dismissed as obsolete decades ago when energy weapons became standard. But kinetic weapons didn't rely on exotic particles or electromagnetic frequencies. They relied on simple, beautiful physics. Mass times velocity equals force. He couldn't find functional railguns, so he built them. The scrapyard became his workshop. He salvaged magnetic accelerators from mining equipment, reinforced the Valiant's power conduits to handle the massive energy draw, and fabricated tungsten slugs from structural beams. Each slug weighed 200 kilograms and would accelerate to a significant fraction of light speed. The Kryn shields were designed to dissipate energy. Marcus was betting they weren't designed for old-fashioned kinetic impacts. 3 months after purchasing the Valiant, Marcus flew her out of the scrapyard. The ship groaned and rattled, her hull plates flexing in ways that would terrify any modern pilot. But she flew. He'd painted over her identifying marks and disabled her transponder. To the Kryn sensors, if they even noticed, she was just another piece of debris drifting between Mars and the asteroid belt. The Kryn command carrier hung in orbit above Earth, a massive construct that coordinated the entire blockade. Intelligence suggested it was lightly armed, relying on its escort fleet for protection. Marcus watched those escorts on his tactical display, timing their patrol routes down to the second. The Valiant drifted closer, running dark, her reactor output minimized to barely detectable levels. Marcus had disabled everything except essential systems. No active sensors, no communications, nothing that would draw attention. When the escort fleet's patrol created a 17-minute gap in coverage, Marcus acted. The reactor roared to full power. The railguns charged, their magnetic coils humming with barely contained energy. The Valiant accelerated directly toward the command carrier, her outdated engines pushing her mass with desperate urgency. Alarms blared on the Kryn ship. Their sensors finally recognized the threat, but they'd dismissed the obsolete frigate too long. By the time their shields powered up to maximum, the Valiant was already firing. The first tungsten slug hit the carrier's forward shield at tremendous velocity. The shield held, but the kinetic impact sent shockwaves through the entire structure. The second slug followed microseconds later, striking the same point. Then the third, fourth, fifth. The shield collapsed. The remaining slugs tore through the carrier's hull like tissue paper, each impact releasing energy equivalent to multiple fusion warheads. Secondary explosions rippled across the massive ship as critical systems failed. Marcus didn't wait to watch. The Valiant was already turning, her engines straining as escort ships converged on his position. Their weapons lit up the darkness, plasma bolts tracking his trajectory. He dove toward Earth's atmosphere, the old ship's hull heating to dangerous levels. The escorts followed, but the Valiant was built for atmospheric entry. They weren't. When Marcus finally landed at a resistance base in the Rockies, the Valiant's hull was glowing red, and half her systems were fried. But the Kryn command carrier was the expanding debris field in orbit, and their blockade was in chaos. Word spread quickly. An obsolete ship, dismissed as scrap, had struck a devastating blow using technology the Kryn had never anticipated. Other mechanics began pulling old vessels from scrapyards across the system. The Resistance had found its weapon, not in humanity's modern fleet, but in the obsolete, over-engineered, fixable ships their ancestors had built. Marcus stood beside the smoking Valiant, watching as the first stars became visible through Earth's atmosphere. The Kryn would adapt eventually, but for now humanity had hope, and that obsolete spacecraft had given it to them.